Thank you. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your nominations. So FDIC insurance is limited to $250,000, and above that, customers with bigger deposits are supposed to wait in line and hope that they can recover a portion of their funds when a bank fails. In March 2023, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank both blew up, creating the third and fourth largest bank failures in American history. In order to prevent additional bank runs and a full-blown financial crisis, the Fed, FDIC, and Treasury took the extraordinary step of guaranteeing all uninsured deposits at those banks. That meant that huge companies like venture capital firm Sequoia, crypto company Circle, and electronics company Roku had billions of dollars in deposits, and they didn't lose a penny when those banks failed. FDIC made good on all of it. Now, I want to contrast that, as Senator Lankford did, with the treatment of two small bank failures in Oklahoma and Texas in the years after SVB crashed. Local small businesses like pharmacies, grocery stores, and construction companies that kept their payroll and other money at community banks got $250,000 in FDIC coverage and lost millions of dollars in the uninsured balance. People understand which banks will and won't get bailed out if there's trouble. In the week following SVB's crash, $100 billion in deposits left smaller banks, while largest banks saw $120 billion in new deposits. So, Mr. McKernan, you were a board member at FDIC in 2003 when SVB and Signature collapsed, and you saw some of those dynamics up close. Has it become clear to the market that in the event of failure, depositors at giant banks will get fully reimbursed while depositors at small banks won't?
Senator, I was at the FDIC during those events, and what I would say is, of course, by law, uninsured depositors are at risk of loss. There has been, I think, a developing market expectation to the contrary, at least with respect to large banks. The events around SVB and Signature may have tended to reinforce that market perception. And
can you explain the implications of this two-tier banking system on both the banking system and the broader economy?
Yeah, Senator, as the Secretary has said, he's focused on Main Street. And I think what that means as a practical matter for me is a real focus on community banks. And, on every Main Street, there's a community bank. All too often, that's a community bank under pressure from whether it's mounting compliance burden or, as you note, this market perception that may advantage the largest banks. And so I think a central issue for financial regulation today is how we ensure that community banks continue to play a role in the financial system of the future. That is an issue that's underscored by your question.
And particularly important because those community banks disproportionately are doing the lending to small businesses in our communities. So one way to help level the playing field is to increase deposit insurance limits for business transaction accounts, bank accounts that businesses use to make payroll and rent. Banks that benefit from the increase would pay for this expanded coverage ahead of time through their regular deposit insurance premiums. It would help smaller banks compete. It would also require big banks to start paying for some of this insurance coverage that they've been implicitly receiving for free. If small and mid-sized businesses are protected, this could also limit the government's impulse to bail out giant banks whenever they get into trouble. So, Mr. McKernan, this idea has received broad bipartisan support. Do you think that Congress should increase deposit insurance limits for business transaction accounts?
Senator, as I was discussing with Senator Lankford, the Secretary's spoken on this and expressed a real interest in exploring an increase in the cap on deposit insurance for business payment accounts. Now, that would obviously require legislation that takes congressional action. But I did recently discuss this issue again with him. He's heard this issue over and over again from many, many, many community banks that he's met with inside Treasury, outside Treasury. I think the bottom line here is the Secretary would be very eager to see legislation to that effect to, again, move the cap up on deposit insurance for business
And can I
payment
count
accounts.
on you to work with Chairman Scott over in banking and me on
Yes,
getting that done?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, I appreciate that. You know, the giant banks don't need another subsidy. This is about leveling the playing field so that our community banks really have a chance to do their good work in lending to local businesses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warren.